Welcome everybody to the information session on the Genomic Medicine degree program at Imperial College. I'm Mike Lovett. I'm the program director for Genomic Medicine. And what we're going to do is give you a short slide presentation of the sort of how the program works and the logistics of the whole process. And then we'll have an extensive question and answer session. And we're very fortunate to have several of our student reps here as well, so they can give you the real nitty-gritty of how it is to be in the program. So let's have the next slide. So these are the administrative team, and we don't all have craniofacial defects, because it does look like my head has been squashed and Eleanor's has been squashed, and the only normal person in the bunch is Dr. Emily Pine. But we do have at present two senior teaching fellows working on the project, and you will interact if you enter the program with our education administrator and the teaching fellows. Next, please. So what are the major features of our MSc? Well, it's obvious if you're coming to Imperial that you will interact with world-renowned researchers. We're one of the top universities in the world. You get teaching from experts and researchers across Imperial. We have a large group of genomics experts. It's called a blended teaching format. That really means that part of it is online in a variety of different formats, and part of it's face-to-face, and we'll come to that in a moment. And we offer full-time and part-time options. The vast majority of students are full-time and do the MSc in 1 year. And we have partnerships with the University of Surrey and the Institute for Cancer Research. And I'll talk specifically about those in a moment as we go through the various modules. So it's a very diverse student cohort, which I think is one of its great attractions, from many different backgrounds, and you're all getting up to speed in genomic medicine and all sharing your views and your experiences. All right, next slide, please. So there are 3 qualifications you can get in this course. By far the majority do the full MSc qualification, but let's go through these. These are possibilities. So if you just do 4 modules, and that is 4 months of work, you can get a postgraduate certificate. If you do 8 modules, again, that's 8 months of work, then you can get a diploma. And by far the vast majority of people do the MSc, which is 8 top modules plus a 3-month research project. And I'll show you the specifics of that in a moment. Next slide, please. So our entry requirements, as you'll see online, our minimum requirement is a 2-1 degree in a relevant biomedical or healthcare subject. And that really means something that is scientifically based. We have had people in who have had degrees in very, very diverse scientific subjects. But if you have no scientific training, then it might prove a little bit difficult to do this degree. But we do accept a wide variety of international qualifications. And in some cases, if you have relevant experience or can show a high level of commitment and interest in genomic medicine, then we will consider you and justify you as an exception to enter the program. So this really highlights the fact that it is key in our assessment to assess your motivation for genomic medicine and whether you understand it and whether you really are committed. All right, next slide, please. So the application process, and really in its logistical steps, are that you submit to the Imperial admissions system. You don't submit directly to us. You submit your written application to Imperial. That is reviewed by them, and if you pass the academic and educational hurdles, then they move that on to us, to our genomic medicine team. And then if you pass that review, which is really a paper review at our stage, and I would say maybe 1 in 10 applications do not pass that, but if you pass that, you will be invited to interview. And that's an interview with myself and a senior teaching fellow, and that takes about maybe 20 minutes. And we really are trying to assess your motivations for doing genomic medicine and your understanding of some of the science behind it. And then within 14 days after that, you get a notification of whether you've been accepted or not. So a reasonably straightforward process. Okay, next slide, please. So this is a course structure, which at face value looks kind of complicated, but it's not really. Everybody starts in October taking what's called fundamentals. So that's a place where whether you're full-time or part-time, you have to start there. And you do that 1 month module of fundamentals of human genetics and genomics. And then you move on to a series of modules. And then in December, in January, you have 2 options. You can either do ethics or what's called genomics and the patient. So you have to choose one or the other, but you can't do both. And then there's a cancer module, and then in March, there are 4 modules that you can choose from. You can do one, but you can't do all. So there's economic evaluation in genomics. There's essentially pharmacogenomics. There's professional and research skills, and there's genomic therapeutics. So those are all very interesting courses, but you have to choose between them, the 4, and just choose one. And then in April, there's infectious disease genomics, and then in May, bioinformatics. And that's what we're just coming to the end of right now. And then everybody who's full-time starts their research project at the end of May, and that runs right the way through into September. So that's the basic structure of the course. There are several options, but to do the entire course, you have to do 8 modules and then the research project. All right, next slide, please. All right, and this really summarizes what I've just told you there. So you take an elective, an optional module, 1 in January and 1 in March. And we ask for you to specify those fairly early on because we need to allocate space and teaching capacity. And then we frequently get the question of what is self-directed learning, because in each of these modules, you're spending 1 week in face-to-face contact. So that's the face-to-face teaching week, and that's usually the 2nd week of a module. So the first week is what I would call scaffolding. You're getting a lot of taught content, but it's online. And then you have a face-to-face week, which is much more interactive and really tries to get you to think and coalesce and critique the content that you're being taught. And then there's another week of teaching after that. And then the final week is really where you put together your assessment for that module, which is delivered online. And then you're done with the module. All right. Right. So all the week 1 content has to be completed in advance of the face-to-face. And you'll see this in any of the module introductions. All right, let's go on. Next slide. Now we get a lot of questions about research projects. They are so diverse that I can't really summarize what the usual research project is, because genomic medicine is a very broad church. It spans multiple fields, and there are way over 200 or 300 investigators who do genomic medicine at Imperial. So we give you a list of people who have said they will take students and their research projects they're interested in, and then you can look through those and decide where you might want to be. But we do not pair people up one-on-one. So the onus is on you to identify and choose your research project. We help you with that, but we're not directive about it. You can carry out your projects within other institutions, both nationally and internationally, and you will have to have a project proposal approved. So you may go and talk to a PI and discuss a project, and then if they say, okay, I'm happy with that, then there's some paperwork to fill out, and once that is approved, you're off and running. Now, that is pretty much the stage at which our current students are at. They are about, at the end of this month, to start their research projects. But previous student projects have been are a very diverse set. Some of them have been bioinformatic, some of them have been wet lab projects, and some of them have been literature-based projects. But we frown on literature-based projects that are just essentially meta-analysis of data. We want something that's new. So it's got to be something in which you're approaching a new question to try and find out new knowledge. But as you see at the bottom here, I mean, we've had lots of people, and this is just a small list. We've had people who have done projects at the Turing Institute. We've had people who've done projects in the US and elsewhere. So the world is your oyster when it comes to it, as long as it's a credible place that is doing the project. Then the project is assessed by a written dissertation, which is 80% of your final mark there, and an oral presentation, which is 20%. So it's quite a heavy amount of your overall grade for the MSc. Next slide, please. All right, so this essentially summarizes what I just told you. You're responsible for securing your own research project. You have to write a project proposal, which is going to be done with your PI. So you're not going to be given that rather daunting hurdle to pass right up front. Your PI will help you. It's a 1 or 2 page proposal, and it's really done so that we make sure that everybody has about the same amount of work. If not, then you get project proposals which are for a PhD rather than an MSc, and it's undoable in 14 weeks. So we want to, and also we don't want to have somebody proposing to do a couple of PCRs, which is certainly not an MSc project. So we're trying to normalize the workload for the students. You do the project over 14 weeks, and if you are registering to be a part-time student, then you have up to a maximum of 12 months to complete that project, so it can be spread out over a much longer time period. And you work out a suitable timeline with your principal investigator, and then you're off and running. And then the oral presentations take place 2 weeks after the dissertation submission. So that would be about the end of September. Next slide, please. So where do our students end up? Well, a very large number of our students aspire to do PhDs, and there is no established, straightforward pipeline into a genomic medicine PhD program. But there are many different PhD programs at Imperial that encompass genomic medicine. So during the course of the year, you have the opportunity to meet many different PIs and lecturers and to work on research projects in their labs. And that is frequently a route into a good PhD program. We have many people who go into the NHS-funded scientist training program, and we have former students who come back, who are in that program, who come back to essentially tutor you into how to achieve that. We have very strong connections with industry, with big pharma, and with small biotech. And that also is something that you will have interactions with. And then we've got a very strong history with finance and entrepreneurial people who come in to learn about genomics and what it really means. And that can be a very interesting and educational experience for the students in the program. Next slide, please. There's a lot of academic and welfare support and infrastructure within the college, and that is just essentially summarized here. But if you do essentially have problems, then you should go through these routes. Everybody, every student within our program is assigned an academic tutor who is not one of the people in the course. It is somebody outside the course, a faculty member or senior person who can give you advice and help if you are having problems. And then there's many, many welfare people who can help you if you're having problems during the year. Next slide, please. Oh, now, finance is frequently a problem. We have limited scholarships. I'm going to come to a couple of them in a moment. They certainly don't cover tuition. So that is a gap in the entire structure, as it is for almost every MSc I've ever seen. But you can have a look at these various URLs and see what the possibility is for tuition, fee inquiries, etc. Next slide, please. Now, there are a couple of scholarships. You can read through this. This one is a scholarship for £3,000, which is nowhere near the tuition fees for our program, but it helps. And you can see that the applications for this one is extremely close. It's 2nd of June 2025 for this coming year. But it's illustrative of the types of things that are available, but there's very few that cover full tuition. Next one, please. Now, this is the India Future Leaders Scholarship, and I think this might have closed. It closed, yeah, I think it closes very soon, if not already. But there is a substantial sum of up to £10,000, and we have awarded a few of these in the past year. So there are specific ones like this, and you certainly should look at those URLs that we put into the presentation. Next slide, please. Oh, here you are. This is just informational. You can click on that QR code and get much more. All right, next slide. All right, let's go to the next slide, please. All right, so some people in our program, pretty much all the people doing part-time MSCs, are being funded by Health Education England, as it used to be known. It essentially is the NHS. And we have made a strategic decision to stop taking that money as of next year. So if you are planning on coming down this route, you can be funded for the first part of it through our current funding of HEE. But as of about this time next year, we are going to be saying no thank you. So we didn't go in for the renewal round of Health Education England funding. Now, to do this in any case, you would have to be an NHS employee and you'd have to have your line manager's approval to do this degree on a part-time basis. So there's all sorts of intricacies to it, and therefore the strategic decision has been made that we will not reapply for this next year. So we're not going to, as of about the middle of 2026, this will not be an option, but it is an option right now if you want to apply. You have to be a home student who's employed by the NHS, and you have to have your line manager's approval, and then you get your fees paid for. Next slide, please. That's it. So I'm very happy to take questions.
Yes, Matt, we have a few in the chat, which I might just read out. If anybody has any questions in the meantime, please feel free to pop them in. So the first question is, what is the structure for part-time students? How many days within the week are the part-time students needing to be on campus for lectures, seminars, and teaching in general?
It's exactly the same as a full-time student in the sense that you have a month-long module, and it is mandatory to attend the face-to-face teaching. So you can't just cop out and say, oh, I'm sorry, I have clinical duties or something, and I can't be there for that week. You have to make a commitment and get your manager's sign off that you will actually be there. And that really, over the years, we've realized that makes a huge difference, because if you try and cop out on the face-to-face teaching, you don't do very well in the assessments. So you would have the first week, as remote learning. The second week on most modules is face-to-face, and you'd have to be there. And then the third week would be remote, and the fourth week would be remote as well. So that would be the time commitment. Now, you have to do fundamentals. Everybody has to do that at the start. But thereafter, you would be deciding on when you wanted to do your modules part-time. So you might do the next module, or you might do something later on. So it can be split up.
Okay, thank you, Mike. The next question relates to HE funding. Someone's asked, for NHS funding, can we transfer the PG Cert credits to other institutions easily?
Yes. That is our understanding, and we would help you do that. So you could do a PG Cert with us, and I can't remember, maybe Emily would know this, but there's a certain limit on the number of credits you can transfer over to another institution, but I can't remember exactly how many.
Yeah, I don't remember off the top of my head either.
All right.
Yeah, we've had people in the past that have done like a cert at one institution, then join us for a diploma and an MSc. So I think it is dependent on the institution, but it is possible, and it might be worth checking with other institutions before joining us for a PG Cert if it's still something you wanted to do.
Yeah.
The next question is, would there be an induction week before the course starts for full-time students?
Well, we do an induction, and we also do a pre-course, which is essentially a not-for-credit course that gets you back up to speed on molecular genetics and things like that. But we do have a couple of days of induction and just getting up to speed on the support network and how the place works. But because people can sometimes be quite remote in terms of, their home location, that's, as far as I understand, not mandatory.
Another HE question. Christina's asked, so that means if we start the NHS-funded PG Cert this year, then continue and top up with 4 modules and a project to get the MSc next year, we won't get any funding anymore. So I think they're just clarifying that after September next year, there's no HE funding.
not with us, but this certainly is a route to go through other institutions. So there are a couple of other institutions within London who are going to continue to apply for and accept HE funding. So that doesn't mean you're sort of nixed out of the entire game. We would certainly be highly supportive of it and try and help you to move to a different institution.
Okay. Another question to do with PhDs. Someone's asked, what is the process to progress to PhD programs after the MSc, and what is the ideal timeline to start applying?
Well, the ideal timeline is probably this coming October. The earlier the better. So it's not like you have to pass some academic hurdle. If you're in an MSc program, then they may look at what you're doing and what you've done, and they will then go through an interview process if you look good on paper. So there is no set of academic hurdles other than having a good degree and being in a good MSc program, and also having excellent references from revered academic arbiters, so people who have a good reputation in the field. So there is no sort of easy, simple formula for going into a PhD program.
Lovely. We don't have any more questions in the chat, but like we've said, we have got 3 student reps here. So if anybody has a question for a student in particular, then please drop that below. I have a few questions that have come in from the forms, and someone's asked about the assessments, and if we have exams or if it's mainly coursework for the program.
Well, you don't have exams in the sort of undergraduate format, and we are not at all fans of handing out multiple choice questions or things like that. We want to build your critical abilities, so where the most of the assessments could be called sort of essays, but that kind of devalues them. They're not just simple little descriptions. They're meant to be critical analysis of some concept or other. So you get given a problem and or a question about something in genomic medicine, and then you have to write maybe 3,000 words or so that critically evaluates a particular point. And it's critical evaluation that's the important thing. That discriminates between somebody who is just sort of doing rote learning and somebody who is really assessing the subject properly.
There is another question, which is quite specific. Somebody has asked, are there any supervisors working in the immunogenetics field or those who study autoimmune diseases and or rheumatology?
Yes. So there's lots. And, you could just, that's can sometimes be a bit difficult to search because Imperial doesn't do a very good job in terms of listing research topics. But yeah, we can certainly help you with that.
And another quite specific question. Someone's asked, would you prefer students with a 3-year BSc or 4-year BSc or BTech biotechnology course?
Well, we really don't discriminate between them. What we do is, if you've got a good degree from a good place, I personally don't care whether it's 3 years or 4 years. I was brought up in Scotland. I did a 4-year degree. But who cares? What you're looking for is a person's breadth of knowledge and how well they've assimilated it and applied it. So we've taken people from all over the place, and from all over the world, but it's that the paper assessment is one thing, but it's talking to them and realizing their motivations and and what they really have achieved that is the important bit.
I think we've got a few questions coming in the chat again, but in the meantime, I'll just have a look and see. And there's still a few questions about projects. Someone's asked, do graduates usually come with an idea in mind and find a supervisor with a related expertise, or is it the other way around?
It's usually the other way around. It's very rare to find somebody who comes in just super motivated to do one thing, and it can also be quite a big red flag. So people may come in and they may say, I just want to do this one thing, and they may be way off track. And it's better for people to come in with a bit of an open mind and then think about what they really want to do than to come in and say, well, I just want to work on, MS or something like that. They maybe have a very distorted view about where the field is at. So in my experience, it's far better to come in with an open mind, to wait until you've been in for a few months and then to start to say, oh, that sounds very interesting, because you may know nothing about, for example, the genetics of dementia, and you go, wow, that's what I want to work on. So
yeah, it may be as well worth asking some of our student reps if that was their experience, or if you guys came in with a specific idea in mind and then what you guys are doing now is maybe different to what you anticipated.
Well,
I didn't have a specific idea. I had a couple of things I was interested in. And then for my master's project, I'm not doing one of those. I'm doing something completely different. And I realized that I'm very interested in it, like during the course. Yeah, so I didn't have a specific idea.
I'll add that and say same for me. I didn't have a specific idea, but Emily and Mike are very encouraging as well for you to go and find your own project if you're have something that you're specifically interested in. So you do, as Mike says, you get provided with a list, but like I personally approached still with an Imperial, but a supervisor that wasn't on the list, and kind of found my own project due to an interest that I had as I went through the course.
that's very useful.
For me, is that like every semester, my interest is always on red lab thing, but this year I'm doing a project focused on bioinformatics, which is really dry lab thing. But why I choose it is because I found out, because through this whole course is through those modules, I see how bioinformatics really works in genetics field. So I think, I guess, the ideas would change. Your ideas maybe gradually change.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for that. And additionally, we've had a question for the reps. What does a typical week look like on genomic medicine? If you guys could give a bit of an insight into that.
I'll go. Every week is quite different because of the way the course is structured. So the first week, as Mike did say before, but the first week is like more online and independent learning, but you're given a lot of resources. You're not left to your own devices in that week. You're given a lot of like reading to do, online courses, all sorts of things. And then the second week is the in-person week, which you definitely don't want to miss, not only because you won't do very well if you're not there for the in-person week, but because it is the best week of the month of the course, like the most enjoyable. It's very interactive, the in-person weeks. We do like a lot of debates and discussions and journal clubs, which everyone is a huge fan of. And then again, it goes back to an online week after that, and then obviously the assessment week. So every week is quite different, I would say.
Thank you.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that the journal clubs are good, because when I present that first journal club in the first couple of weeks, everybody goes, what? You expect us to do what?
You get used to it. It can be nerve-wracking in the first week because you're in front of a lot of new people, but you do it over and over and over again. By the third or fourth journal club, there's no nerves and everyone really enjoys it. Like by the time we got to the ethics module, which I think is the 5th module or so, it was very debate heavy and everyone was getting fully involved because we have had so many debates and discussions in journal clubs.
Yeah. Yeah, and everybody gets into it, and it's really cool to watch. Yeah, it's just amazing. Yeah.
We've had another question. Someone's asked, are there any websites or references that you recommend us to go through before starting the course? So just any material that could be helpful for students joining in September.
Personally, I think the course handbook, which is available online. But Emily, do you have any suggestions there?
Nothing specific. I think that the primer materials that we provide are really the main resources that are the most helpful and kind of specific to the content that you'll look at.
Yeah.
I think we've gone through most of the questions, but I think there's a few still coming in the chat. Let me see if there's any others. Someone's asked if we can attend remotely, but I think we've addressed that there is a teaching week which everybody needs to be in person for. Someone's asked if there's any online courses, but at the moment we don't offer that for genomic medicine.
No.
If anybody else does have any questions, please do feel free to pop them in the chat. But I think we've addressed most of them that were sent in. And if anybody does have any follow-up questions about HE funding in particular, then please do feel free to give us an email and we can give you more information on that process.
Yeah.
I think that's everything.
Thank you to our student reps. Thank you for taking the time. This is very, very useful. Very helpful. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Always.
All right. Okay. Well, it's been a pleasure virtually meeting you, and please apply to our program because we feel like it is vibrant and interesting and useful, and we would love to talk to you about your interest in genomic medicine.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks a lot, everybody.